I'm John Delano, political editor, KDK TV, CBS Pittsburgh. And our very special guest is State Representative Johanna McClinton, who is now the Democratic leader in the State House of Representatives. Congratulations, Leader McClinton, and so nice of you to be with me.
Thank you so much, John. It's awesome to be with you. I'm all the way in Pittsburgh, right from my home.
Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. I think a lot of folks don't know who you are. So let me ask you to give me your 60-second elevator speech. Who is Johanna McClinton?
Absolutely. So I'm a millennial. I'm from Southwest Philly. I still live here. I never left the city. I went to LaSalle and studied political science, went to Villanova Law School, spent almost 10 years in the city practicing law as a public defender, left the Defender Association on a passion to do larger scale justice reform, went to work for my state senator in the Pennsylvania Senate, went on the floor of the Senate and couldn't believe there were few women. But I never thought about running for legislative office until 2 years later when my representative retired. So as a result, I've been in the House for 5 years, and I'm so excited and humbled to be the first woman to lead the Democrats in the Pennsylvania House.
Well, it is a tremendous honor, and it's especially says a lot about you that in just 5 years, you've moved from a freshman lawmaker to the leader of your party. How did you do that?
Well, it did not happen by myself at all. It could not have happened, quite honestly, without partners in Western Pennsylvania. The first folks who talked to me about filling the big shoes of Leader Dermody were members of the House from Allegheny County. They called me and said, you should think about it. And I was just like you, John, like, there's no way it's time for this type of move. But after serious conversations and really recognizing that I've always been in a bit of an uphill battle fighting, whether it was for a client or whether it was working for the minority whip in the Senate, Senator Williams, or you name it, I've always been in an uphill battle. So I didn't want to discount the skills I've built thus far.
Well, you can't get to a position like that with a lot of support. So that's pretty obvious. But what does it mean to be the leader of a minority party in the State House of Representatives? One has the feeling that it is the Republicans who really run the show in Harrisburg, in the State House and State Senate. Is there a role for the Democrats and particularly the Democratic leader?
Absolutely. So one thing Pennsylvania voters showed us in the November election is that they still do support Democratic values. We see that with the overwhelming nomination of Joe Biden to be our next president. We know that even though in the House there are only 90 out of 203, it shows us we have more work to communicate on a larger scale, what we stand for, what we're fighting for, what our priorities are, how they overlap. So we've got work to do outside the building to get our message out. And inside the building, we have work to do to remind the majority of what's important, what's timely with this pandemic, the support that's needed. So I am one that has been blessed to be able to work across the aisle. I've been able to get bills passed, and we've always been in the minority in my short tenure. So I know what it is to walk over there and say, hey, is this important to you? And how can we work on it? You can take the credit, but I'll tell my neighbors when I get home, this is something I supported. So I look forward to doing that because we're in a serious time right now all across this Commonwealth.
Well, you're exhibiting a commendable spirit of bipartisanship, but I'm not sure that it's always reciprocated.
That's true. That's absolutely true. I think that one of the things that we see as a benefit from our current president who's outgoing is highly charged politics. I think people have always usually chosen a party or maybe they're independent. But for 4 years, we've been in an atmosphere with highly partisan politics. And unfortunately, this pandemic has made a lot of things like health political as well. So we do have things to overcome. I'm not saying, that we're bipartisan blindly, because we have core values that we're not going to compromise on, but we also realize that there are people at home who don't even have party affiliations or votes who need our help. And that is what's key. putting the people first. And that's something House Democrats have always done.
Well, let me ask you, you mentioned really there is the diversity within the Democratic Party that is pretty obvious if you come from Western Pennsylvania. And for years, we used to have only pro-life, pro-gun, pro-union Democrats. And that was the trilogy. Every Democrat was pro-life, pro-gun, and, and certainly pro-union. That has broken down a lot, and we have differences among our delegations out here. And many people think that the Democratic Party has really gone Philadelphia. It's too liberal, and it doesn't represent, frankly, working class folks anymore, as it once did in Western Pennsylvania. It still explains why Donald Trump carries these Democratic counties out here, and state House members. We, every year they put up challenging candidates, good candidates against incumbent Republicans who ought to be vulnerable. But we saw it again this year. Every one of them lost. And of course, as you note, Frank Dermody, the Democratic leader, lost. So is there anything that you can do as leader of the state House to broaden the tent, or in some way, that this isn't a party that wants to defund police and wants to take away guns and, all the things that get ascribed to the Democratic Party and their candidates when they run in Western Pennsylvania? Is there anything you can do about that, Leader McClinton?
Absolutely. And there are lots of things I intend to do about it, but I can't give away the whole game book. So this is what I will say to all your watchers and listeners. The Democratic Party is a very big tent. We have room for everybody. We have room for the quote unquote progressives. And of course, we have lots of room for the conservatives. Over time, we've just seen changes, not just in our party. I've seen the Republican Party get ultra conservative, even in Harrisburg, and the types of legislation that have been priorities. I mean, just putting corporations first over working class people. But where we have failed is not explaining that in a simple message so that voters understand who is for them and who has other priorities. So it'll be my job to make sure that over the next 2 years, we are making our message clear and that we're also showing the work and the effort behind it. Many times, it's hard for voters to go against an incumbent if they don't have some major fallout. Even if they think, oh, they may be conservative, what difference does it make? We have to do the work on the ground, explaining what significant changes are. And I think one thing this pandemic has shown is that the inequities that have always existed, not just in urban communities, but in rural communities as it relates to healthcare and disparities, nothing's been done about it, yet the Republicans have been in control for years. So that being said, I do believe a time will come in Pennsylvania, just like it was in November when they elected Joe Biden overwhelmingly, that they're going to choose state legislators that reflect similar sentiments and value.
Let me ask you then about this, because obviously with the loss of Frank Dermody, Representative Dermody from our Oakmont area, who was the Democratic leader and a longtime state rep from this region, the leadership of the Democratic Party in the state House has really gone Philadelphian. The top 3 positions are held by Philadelphia area folks. What does that mean for Pittsburgh? Does that mean less in Western Pennsylvania, less support, and less understanding of what we stand for out here? Can you, a lot of people might be worried about that politically as to whether that means loss of monies and the like. So can you help folks understand what does it mean to have 3 out of 4 top leadership positions in the Democratic Party come from Philadelphia?
Absolutely. So all it simply is reflective of is where population is. It's not reflective of a priority or of us versus them. If anyone checks my personal Facebook, Sunday night, as soon as it was clear the Steelers won, I wrote a big congratulatory post. Of course, I couldn't say the same a little later, a few hours about my Eagles, but clearly it's only about where folks live and where we're seeing growth in the caucus. We're seeing growth in the caucus, in the population in Philly. We'll likely have another legislative seat in the city. We're seeing growth in our caucus in the Southeast, and that's where our appropriations chair is from, the suburbs. When you look at the state budget, and this is not a knock to anywhere in the state, but 40% of it comes from our region. So, you're just seeing what's reflective of where people live and where the money is that's coming from taxpayers. However, we're looking out for everybody from Erie all the way to Centre County, all the way to Scranton. We're looking out for everyone. This is not a Philadelphia-centric issue. If that's what we wanted, I would be in City Hall at the mayor's office perhaps, but I want to be in Harrisburg, working for Pennsylvanians across the Commonwealth who are trying to come out of this pandemic with their health, with their safety, and with the ability to compete and have a good job. So that being said, that's an issue that affects everybody, no matter where you live, no matter who you voted for president, or who your state legislator is. That is what our commitment and priority is.
A couple other quick points, Leader McClinton, and then I'll let you go. This has been great. Let me ask you about this. You mentioned, the first thing you said when I asked you about your election as leader of the Democratic House is you pointed to your gender. But you also hold another first as the first African-American woman in this position. How important is that to you and to the people of Pennsylvania?
Well, I think it's very important. It's very exciting, and it's great because as you look at elected office, as we were talking with your mom being the first woman elected in Mount Lebanon back in the 80s, women have always played a role in the political sphere, always. It took us a long time to be able to vote. And then, of course, it took Black women and women of other different ethnic minorities even longer to vote. However, that being said, we've always played a role. But what you'll see is we've been underrepresented. Even in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is at the bottom of all the states ranked on diversity and on the makeup of women versus men. So that being said, to me, it's just truly, truly remarkable. Not that I'm the first Black woman, but the fact that our caucus had decisions to make between another man or myself, and they decided to do something different, to go in another way, to take a bold step that not just opened the door for me, but the way I look at it, it opened the floodgates for one day when I'm retired, and hopefully before then, for us to have a woman speaker, for us to have a woman governor, for us to send from Pennsylvania a woman to the United States Senate. I mean, we've always been around and been involved and been engaged, but we haven't been able to get the support to hold elected office or to even be able to get into the leadership ranks. So it's not so much about what it means for me, but it's exciting for what it means for our future in the Commonwealth.
Well, obviously, one clear candidate for speaker is yourself, if and when the Democrats take control of the state house.
Well, we won't do that without Western Pennsylvania.
So
if that is the way that
absolutely correct.
The will of the voters goes, then I look forward to the will of the voters being made November of 2022.
Well, again, congratulations to you, Representative Joanna McClinton, the leader of the Democratic Party in the State House of Representatives. It was a real pleasure to be with you today, and I look forward to many future interviews in the years to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Same here.
Steelers fans, we've got some exciting news to share.
Yes, that's right. Broadcasting and Cable recognizes outstanding work done by local teams.